We've had around a decade of utterly awful youth intakes in this save with little or nothing worth talking about. But finally, I have a player worth showing you from one of the youth intakes. Oh, and I think we've just found the next big African superstar. Yep, it's that time again where I tell you about some European finals that are going on over on stream. We have two Hungarian sides in European finals yet again live over on stream. So join us over there for that after you've watched this video and caught up on all the good stuff. And all the VODs, of course, can be found over on the second channel, which is linked in the description. They go out the day after every stream. But for now, season 21 of Building a Nation with MTK Budapest was set up to be one of building for the future. We knew now that we could no longer really complain about the heavy points dilution that we were going to get. With 7 teams in Europe, that was always going to be a problem, and we had to make sure that those teams could now compete in Europe if we had any chance of catching England and finally becoming the best league in Europe. But first, there was the little job of overcoming Spain and getting back into second place. But before any of that, there was the little matter of that Conference League final from last year. The 7th attempt at a Hungarian side to win the Conference League. So let's just see how that went. Yeah, it's beginning to become a bit of a broken record, if I'm honest, friends. Aston Villa 3, Budapest 0. Very sort of even first half. Nothing was really going on. Villa took the lead in the 53rd minute, and it kind of went a little bit rubbish with there. But then, when Budapest got a penalty in the 68th, we thought, finally, there's a chance to get level. They were in the ascendancy, things are going well, and then Fruta bloody missed it. Mr. Fruit Pastels himself missed the penalty. And then, there was a red card for Villa as well, with Barney Noon, or no one as we've been calling him, getting sent off. And then 2 late ones from Cartel Bastok just made it an absolutely ridiculous result, frankly, because, like, this game should never have been 3-0. And that is now 7 Conference League finals the Hungarian sides have been in, with 5 different teams. I think it might even be 6. No, it is 5. And they've lost all 7 of them. It just seems crazy that in this save, the easiest competition to win, and the one that we've always had teams from our leagues win in previous Building a Nation saves, yet remains elusive to us. But that's just life, isn't it? Maybe this year, maybe it's one of the finals this year for another shot at it. Who knows? Find out later. But moving swiftly on from that, it is time to talk about transfers. And this year, I think we've actually been a little bit light in terms of the number of players we're bringing in and the pure money that has been spent on those players. That will most definitely change this summer, but I still believe we've managed to find a couple of gems, including that aforementioned African superstar I mentioned in the intro. So let's get into that. And as for outs, there was literally no major outs whatsoever. We've basically brought in almost no money in terms of transfer outs this summer too, or the summer before rather. And that's again something that's going to lead to us probably having to make a big sale this summer just to keep things balanced and allow the loan farm to continue to flourish. We dropped a tasty £3.8 million on Yuri Di Piedade, or the Pie Daddy as we've been calling him so far. 3.8 million for a guy that's got that kind of value now is a really solid pickup for us. He's gone into the second tier to Puskás, who of course are back in there as well. And you know what? He's played 38 games within the season. He's getting football and he's going to get a chance to develop. And that's all we really want. And not a bad deal. Then we have Ivan Radocic, who we picked up for £3.9 million from Osijek. Really solid signing for me. Again, he's one of these players that is just going to be a decent option. Again, another DM. We've managed to find some really solid young DMs. He's still alone at Osijek for the moment. He'll be returning to us this summer. Hopefully we can get him a lovely move. And I feel like he'd be a really solid player for possibly even like a lower mid-table side in the top flight right now. Then possibly one of the biggest bargains actually, Rolf Manja Anfinson from Bodø for £4.2 million. That's been roughly the sort of price that we've been paying for players. And again, fantastic looking player, this guy. Now, he's been on loan at Jury this season, hasn't played a great deal, and I might recall him. Although, potentially with them being relegated this year, and he does have an extra year on his loan, I think he could potentially flourish in the second tier with them next season. So it might be worth keeping him out there to see if he can enjoy a slightly more increased game time next year. Next, we have £4.8 million signing Majid Machiri, who's coming from Civetta over in Switzerland. The main reason we signed him up was because he was on the next gen list, very high up, and was described as the next Michel Platini, model citizen personality. Frankly, he just doesn't seem to maybe have the potential, but I still think there's a great player here that maybe just we couldn't get him alone, which was the biggest problem, I think. So he might be one that we maybe just move on with a big sale fee in there potentially. Then £500,000 on Carlos Ramos. Now, I think he is a fantastic pickup. Again, these cheap buys that we're getting for under £1 million, really, really useful to build this up. Great determined personality, just a solid player at his age. And again, the value is really there. On loan at Spartacus, who have been promoted back to the top flight this season, and he's been part of that, albeit not amazingly. But what I will say is, though, considering he only started 11 games, 4 goals and 7 assists is a fantastic return for him. Lovely to see. Then another player whose value is absolutely astronomical, and I've only just noticed that. So this is Nicholas Herlem Pedersen, £2.6 million from Vålerenga. Norway have been turning out so many insane talents in this save that it's just dwarfing anything that Sweden or Denmark or anyone else in that region can really do. 27 to 41 million he is worth. Definitely a future Norwegian international. That light-hearted personality is not letting him down at all. He's playing a decent number of games in the second tier for Budapest, and a second year out on loan there, I think he could really start to develop into a fantastic attacking midfielder. Look at the passing he's already got. And now another player of that similar kind of value, £800,000 signing for Hugo Canada, although we've not been calling him that.
Oh, Canada, my home and native land.
He was an example of one of those rare players that we actually managed to poach when he was still on a youth contract. Normally players just sign a contract with their club the moment you approach them like that, but he didn't. And for 800k to have him join us again, he's still not even old enough to go out on loan yet, and won't be until, well, possibly the next January window. He's that young. So look forward to seeing what he can do when he finally does get a loan. Maybe he lacks a little bit of jumping reach, but with that height that he's got, I hope that could improve. Professional personality too, really like him. Then we have Rick van Beek for 350 grand from Utrecht. Centre back again, the value's enormous. Weirdly on him, when we first found him, he was valued at like £10 million. And then I randomly went back in for him to have a little look, and his value would drop right down. And I think that's because when he'd signed a pro deal with them or something, I don't know what happened. Regardless, we were able to pick him up for basically nothing, and he's joined us as well. Again, too young to go out on loan. We really are finding them even younger this year to try to develop them for a little bit before they then go out on loan, and I think he's going to be great one day. Similar story here, 400 grand release clause for Jose, who was from Valencia. He's now gone on loan to Ica. Hasn't played too much yet, but he's still only 17. So many of these players that I love bringing in. Now, you might note there's a lack of players for the first team here. We really have prioritized that with our signings that you'll see next season in terms of players that join us this summer. We are really strengthening the first team squad with that. This was more of a year to get some guys for the loan farm and some guys for the future. Though we did drop £11 million on Ataliba, a 22-year-old Brazilian attacking midfielder who I'm not sure if he has the ceiling perhaps, but regardless, I do like him as a player, and he has actually featured for us in a few league matches upon joining us in the January transfer window. £11 million is a lot, but we have signed a few other players for similar fees that you'll see probably next season. But now, on to the last player. A player that we originally found him just by looking through some Ivorian youth teams, as you do, you know, standard sort of jazz. But when we got the initial scout reports, he looked a lot better than the stars would suggest. Now, it might just been a case for us that he had no potential ceiling, and because he was so young and decent, he'd had a chance to get a lot of games and has kind of reached his potential already. But we were willing to take a punt, and this was the gift that we ended up being presented with. This is Ghislaine Yao. He's 18-year-old, Ivorian striker. £115,000 from Afad Jakanu. I mean, he is ridiculously good. And weirdly, the moment he joined us, suddenly there was reassessment, and all of a sudden they were like, no, he actually does have a bit of potential for him as well. He's improving. He's got great temp pulls for the striker for a start. Dribbling, finishing, first touch, composure solid, off the ball fantastic. Even his passing's decent, great technique. Decisions are solid. He's still only 18 as well. Professional personality, solid physical. He's got a reasonable amount of pace on him as well. I think this guy is the real deal. But that genuinely concludes our transfers. Now, there's a load of players signed up. Oh, maybe I'll spoil you for one, just so you get a chance to see one of the guys we're looking at. Because future transfer-wise, as you can see, quite a lot of players joining us. But just to pick one to show you off this season, this is Claudio Raposo, 26-year-old Brazilian, 9.8 million is the fee. Yes. Now, obviously, with Ingram and Nunez aging out a little bit, Ingram's 33, Nunez is 30, nearly 31, we needed to have someone who's slightly younger that can still do a bit, and I feel like Raposo is going to be that man for us. He will join us in the summer, and we'll be able to slot straight into our first team. Probably will immediately be worth £50 million. He's that good, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in the team for the next sort of, 5 or 6 years, basically. I'm really, really looking forward to it. No jumping reach, of course, but he's such a technician on the ball, and we like that kind of player. So, yeah, stay tuned for all those other players the start of next season, plus also all the other players I pick up over this transfer window. This is going to be a big year for us. But now to the league, where things have actually gone quite straightforward for us this year. Our first unbeaten season for quite some time. We didn't think it would ever happen again, but we've been very solid. Ever since we started playing our normal tactic in the league, we've really started to become very solid. We've actually only lost one of our last 70 league matches, and one defeat in the last 2 seasons is pretty damn good, frankly. Kujvada and Halalash, naturally the second best sides in this league, second and third. They're very, very excellent teams. They are pretty much guaranteed to be doing well every single season now. They're in a great spot. The money will keep flowing, and they're just cut above everybody else by 20-odd points. No doubt about it. Debrecen sneaking into the 4th Champions League spot this season at the expense of Zirmot, who are, of course, in it this year. Little bit disappointed to see that, but Debrecen still to this day are the only Hungarian side, other than us, that have got through a knockout round of the Champions League. So you never know with that. Honvéd, great to see them playing in the Europa League next season as well. They nearly got in the Champions League. They've got great young players on loan from us. I'm expecting them to get better and better. And you'll note Ferencváros came 10th this this season and only got into Europe by winning the cup. We didn't throw it to them. They actually beat us fair and square in a cup match. Think about that, though. Need to show you this. They damn near got relegated. Ferencváros have been 10th or lower since match day 7. They'd won 1 of their first 24 league games. They damn near got relegated. They were in the relegation zone from match day 20 to match day 31. If it wasn't for a good result against, I think it was actually Haladash, and then a draw against us on the final day of the season, again, where we didn't throw the game or anything, they probably would have got relegated and would have been playing in the second tier while being in the Europa League. And that is just unthinkable to have Ferencváros do that. Given they were in the Champions League this year, don't know what happened to them, but thank God they pulled it out the bag. But nevertheless, they do actually stay up, which is the main and most important thing. Jurin and Van Dam tied for top scorer with Živkovic with 18 goals each. Van Dam's mostly been a backup this season. Jurin's played when he had to. Michal and Velázquez with a lot of assists in there too. Jurin will still win player of the season, but it's nice to see Van Dam stepping in. Now, for those of you that aren't regular watchers of the live streams, I've had a lot of camera problems lately with my camera constantly freezing to the point where sometimes it would freeze 50 times a stream and it was getting ridiculous. So essentially, I ended up having to buy a webcam and use that, except I didn't, and I bamboozled chat.
The camera, or something wrong with the camera situation, was clearly on its last legs. So it was really a case of call an ambulance. But not for me, because actually it's working. I have fooled you all. You have been duped, my friends, by a man with a camera. You've been deceived and bamboozled.
But that is enough of that. Now, big stuff. European football. Let's go. Start with us, of course. We hit the ground running big style. A 6-1 hammering of Manchester United. I mean, it was a close game for a little while. Velázquez with a brace, Baumeister with a goal as well. And then Sem just came off the bench randomly to keep things tight. Scored a hat-trick in the final 10 minutes of the match, really showing that he can still do it at the biggest level, but he still probably will only ever be the second choice striker because he's just not on Blas's level, but at least he's doing things like this. We then had a very tight result against Porto with Baumeister and Nunez grabbing the goals, and a late one back from Schwarz in the 94th minute got Porto quite close, and that was a really strong performance from them. It honestly could have been a draw. Then we put up another 6 goals. Jurin with a brace, Velázquez, Vilome, and Nunez in there too. Hammering Red Star 6-0. So a 6-1 and a 6-0 in our first 3 matches. We then followed that up with another 6-0, this time away at Atletico, to show you the levels we're on now. Patrice with another brace, Nunez, Michal, and Blas getting in on the goals. There's no way this game should have been 6. We've been very clinical in certain games this year, and it's really showed. But the fact that we'd scored so many goals, I think we'd scored 20 in our first 4 matches. Mad. And that got even better. With a 1-0 victory at the Etihad, Marcelo Nunez in the 86th minute gave us the winning goal to just get a massive win for us. 5 wins out of 5 and a win at the Etihad. However, we did have a brilliant goal disallowed for offside for no reason. You'll see it here.
Well, go on, Darla. I swear to God, if you disallow this for offside, I'm actually going to flip the table. Disallowed. What? Are you shot? What? How is he interfering with play?
There is no way in a billion years that he is interfering with play and that goal would ever be disallowed in real life. So we were a little bit disappointed, as at the time it was 0-0 when that goal went in. So we were very frustrated with that, but luckily Nunez was there to get it and make it 5 out of 5. We then travelled to the Netherlands and made it 6 out of 6 with Marcelo Nunez again and Thomas Velázquez, who's had a wonderful scoring season this year. Boya, a former player, actually got a goal back for Ajax, but it wasn't enough. Then we had our standard 2 easy games after Christmas and we were able to send it all home. A 3-0 victory against Slovan Bratislava, Bigmanovic, Michal and Jurin with the goals. Comfortable, probably should have scored more. And then against Red Bull Salzburg, it was a nice easy way to wrap things up. Blas with a brace, 2 for Patrice again, 1 from Kenny. Now weirdly, when we were 2-0 up, they actually scored their first 2 shots of the game and got right back into this match out of nowhere. We then just kind of put our foot down and made it 8 wins out of 8 in the Champions League. Only the second time in this save that we've ever won every single group stage game. Great work from us, just dominant. And what that meant is we actually ended up winning it by 5 points, and we were actually qualified as number 1 before we'd even started the last game. 31 goals scored in our 8 Champions League matches was sensational scenes. But look a bit further down. Haladash, 14th place in the Champions League. Top half finish for them, which is absolutely stellar. I mean, they got 4 wins. Juve, Club Brugge, Malmö and Nice with the great results there. They also got draws against Hoffenheim and PSG. Their only defeats were against Chelsea and Real Madrid. And they were doing well in those games as well. Fantastic work from them. But also, Girmot, 19th spot. Their first ever attempt at the Champions League, 3 wins. They beat Ajax, Red Bull Salzburg and Malmö, got draws against Liverpool, RB Leipzig and Nice. Just superb performances from them. Only defeats were to Dortmund and Barca. Standard. Now, unfortunately, Ferencváros, having a struggling season, still managed 27th place and did get 7 points. They ended up winning their final 2 matches in the Champions League to their final 2 of their last 3 to give themselves a chance, but it wasn't quite enough. They beat Milan and Villarreal, got themselves a draw against Dinamo Zagreb, but it wasn't enough as they lost to Bayern, FC Copenhagen and Marseille being the key defeats in there that I think really did cost them. But still, a lot of extra points going our way in the Champions League, which is very, very nice indeed. Now, of course, meant though that Girmot and Haladash went through to the next round of the Champions League, and we got extra bonus points for qualification, which is so important in terms of coefficients. So I'll just show you the next round of the Champions League for them before we come back to what we did. First up, Ajax versus Haladash, a 3-3 draw in Amsterdam, and what a result that is, frankly. To get an away draw, we thought, you know what, they're definitely better than Ajax, as they'd shown in the group stages, particularly as Ajax had lost to Girmot in the group stages too, and then Girmot had gone and put a 1-0 lead on Spurs. You can really see that the Hungarian sides are just getting better now, and we had high hopes for the second leg, which were then immediately dashed, as Haladash failed to beat Ajax in the home game, lost on penalties, and Girmot got humped 5-0 by Tottenham. And it was a period for Girmot didn't win a game for like 3 months in all competitions, and it's such a sad thing to have happen to lose them both at this round, because when we saw those draws, we thought they had a great chance of progression to the next round. So it's such a shame to lose them both here, but they're at least really threatening now, and I feel like Haladash, one of these days, very soon, honestly, are going to get a top 8 finish in the Champions League. They just get better and better, and they keep signing quality players. But that brings our attention back to us as we played our first round game against Benfica, which was very easy indeed, as we just continued our 9th consecutive win, a hat-trick for players, Preetzel with a goal, one for Kevin Griffiths, who's now back at the club after returning from his loan spell. He turned it down, so he's probably the biggest player that we've gained in terms of strength this season, just because he came back from his loan spell, and he's been fantastic this year as a backup / sort of can come in and do a job. Second leg, similar story, 2 more for players, 1 for Kenny. Cardoso got 1 for Benfica, but it didn't matter as we won 8-2 through to the next round against Liverpool, which is a real toughie, and it proved that way at Anfield. Valier gave them the lead after just 2 minutes, but Patrice in the 81st minute gave us the equaliser, up the first points essentially that we dropped after 9 consecutive wins in the Champions League. No, it was 10 consecutive wins actually, wasn't it? This was our 11th game and our first dropped result at all, but a 1-1 draw at Anfield is still a good result for us. We were the better side. I felt we could do them at home, and that's what we did. Just about. We flew into a 4-0 lead after 27 minutes, and I got so cocky. I genuinely said, this is going to be 6. Liverpool are rubbish. There's no chance. And it's like the game heard me, because all of a sudden, they started playing quite well. They got 2 goals back before half-time, another one in the 73rd, and we ended up shutting up shop just to see it over the line. Never jinx, FM. Do not test this game. It will mess with you. But luckily, we were through to the next round. I would say deservedly so. A 4-3 victory into the semi-final against Chelsea. And what a weird game this was. 6-2 in the home game. Chelsea scored their first 2 shots of the game. That's how poor they were, but they still managed to grind some chances. But it didn't matter, as Blaz, it was 2-2 at half-time, but in the second half, 4 goals from us. Blaz gets 4, Big Manovic with a goal, and Nunez making it 6 in the end. We comfortably hammered Chelsea and gave ourselves a great chance at progressing to a Champions League final for God knows how many times in this save, honestly. But we've been unlucky in last couple, so we needed a good result. And actually, we didn't really get that in the second leg. Lucas Matavina, a player we'd looked at a few years ago, gave Chelsea the lead, and we just kind of never really responded after that. Our first defeat in Europe this season comes at the second leg of the semi-final. I was kind of hoping we could go a full year unbeaten, but this is why it was so important to get results in those home games, because 1-0 defeats away from home don't matter if you can win 6-2 in the home game. So we are through to the next Champions League final. Once again, we will play Real Madrid. But now, to the other competitions. First, the Europa League, where we had Kizvada and Budapest, and bugger me, Kizvada are just massive. They should be in the Champions League, honestly. 4th in the Europa League group, 5 wins on there. Just comfortably dispatching teams for the most part, getting draws where they should do. 1 random defeat to Rangers, which was a little bit surprising, honestly, but it didn't matter as they came 4th in the Europa League. Really good result for them. And Budapest coming 14th is certainly nothing to be sniffed at. Some good results in there for them as well, including away at Feyenoord, which was really solid, and a draw against Valencia in there too. Did lose to CSKA Sofia, though, which was a bit surprising considering how far down they were. That's the one that really probably cost them a spot in the top 8 themselves. But needless to say, top half, that's the main thing. Their reward was a draw against Sturm Graz, who have struggled a little bit this season. They got a 1-1 draw away from home with Michel Bell getting the result for them there, and in the home leg managed to pull it out with a penalty shootout. 2 more goals from Michel Bell. Sort of scraped their way through a little bit there, which wasn't ideal, but they were struggling in the league that season, so just to see them get to the second knockout round was probably good enough for us. Kizvada drew Young Boys and Budapest drew Fenerbahce and got off to the best start. 1-0 win with Martin scoring the goal. Kizvada again with Orman and Suto making it 2-0 over Young Boys. Just a great result away from home. In the home legs, well, unfortunately, Fenerbahce with Paz and then with Murat Elmaz in extra time did enough to knock out Budapest, but they did an okay job. Kizvada managed to win home and away, though, again to progress through to the quarter-finals, which saw them face Lille, a decent side to play against, but a 2-2 draw in France gave them what they needed, despite that 94th minute equaliser from Lille, which did worry us, but we've seen how good these Hungarian sides can be at home. And in the second leg, they proved exactly that with a 4-1 hammering of the French team, setting up themselves a semi-final against Lyon, who'd narrowly knocked out Roma. Monaco-Valencia would be the other semi-final. There wasn't like an established massive mega team in it like there has been in recent years where Liverpool have won it, City have been in the final. This felt like a good time for Kishvarda to maybe make that happen. And they got off to the best possible start with a 1-0 win against Lyon through Orman in the first leg. Monaco with a 3-0 hammering of Valencia gave themselves a really good chance at being in the final. And Kishvarda got the business done. Bohats with the winner away from home against Lyon. The red card did not help them, not that it mattered too much. 2-0 victory. Valencia got the win, but it wasn't enough. And Kishvarda will play in their second Europa League final. They won against Manchester City, albeit against the run of play massively. And now they'll face Monaco in a Europa League final, a team that I genuinely believe they are capable of beating. And that just leaves us with the Europa Conference League, where Debrecen were our only representative. And they did a solid job as always. They lost their opening match against Brighton, which we kind of expected they would do, but then went on to win their next 5 matches and comfortably qualified third. But you can see with the likes of Napoli and Sporting and Brighton in here, it was always going to be a tough one. But still, there wasn't like that massive team that we thought maybe could absolutely kill it all. Other than Napoli winning all 6 matches, they weren't super emphatic with it, so we thought there was still a chance potentially for that. Debrecen got to skip around, and through they went. They would face AEK of Greece in the round of 16. A 2-0 victory in Greece did the business. Rocha and Lopez with the goals. You'll also note Astana 2-0 up against Napoli from the home leg here. Just funny scenes. And then, well, Debrecen with a 0-0 draw at home were able to knock them out. But more important than that, you'll see Astana only lost 3-2 in Italy. The Kazakhstani side knocks out the winning team from the group. Madness. And you'll notice that this round we also lost Brighton, we lost Besiktas, we lost Napoli, all at this same round of the tournament, and Sporting only just went through as well, which was mad. But unfortunately, this then set up a draw against Athletic Club, and it went to 2-0. And it's a real shame, because if Debrecen had managed to get a better result there, and you'll just see that the second leg, unfortunately, was even worse for them, as they lost 4-1 on aggregate, they would have set up a draw against either Astana or Maribor, although it would have been Maribor, in the next round of this, and that would have given them such an amazing opportunity to get to a final. It would have been such a great chance. It would have been in the semis against Astana. Oh, what a chance that would have been. Because what that does to the coefficients is remarkably lovely. On the year, you'll see we are racking in number 2 spot. And that's really, really good, because that could potentially get us another team in Europe next year with which to make an impact. 20.286 with 2 finals still to be played. So there's going to be some extra points just for playing in them. And if we win both of them, wow. And there's a huge opportunity to get quite close to 21 points this year with 7 teams in Europe. We are actually quite good. We could get quite close to England, honestly, by the end of this year in terms of on the year, and continue to slowly bring that gap back a little bit year on year. And that's all we've been really doing. But the key thing as well is that over the course of this year, we've actually extended our gap over Spain that we earned at the start of the year, and looks like there's almost no chance that we won't go back into second at the start of next year. So we haven't slipped off, and we're now getting 20+ point seasons with 7 teams in Europe, and that really is the key to me to see that we're actually on the right level now. If we can start to sustain these kind of results now and start to build strength into the teams in the Champions League, because that's really where those points have been left on the table over recent years. It's those teams not progressing far enough in the Champions League. If we can start getting 4 teams through to the knockouts and get a couple of rounds of progression from the slightly lesser Hungarian sides in those competitions and continue the stuff elsewhere, I think that's how we start getting the 22-23 point seasons, particularly as those points have to come from somewhere. They'll most likely have to come from England or Spain, and I think that's how we're going to slowly catch them, potentially, if we can keep doing this over the next 10 years. But we are going to struggle when we lose that 25.9 season. But that's enough of that. It's now time to talk about the youth intake. Now, it was still a half-star youth intake. We just don't seem to get anything but half-star youth intakes no matter what we do now. We've tried every single trick in the book. It's half stars every year. So we don't expect much. However, this year, we did actually get a player that's worth showing you. And here he is. This is Adam Fejez, who's a 15-year-old Hungarian, obviously, central midfielder. He's only 4 stars in terms of his potential, but we have had players that came through at like 3 stars actually be upgraded to 4 or even 4.5 in the past upon actually developing at the club for a little bit. So we're not super concerned about that. It's the first 4-star player we've had at a youth intake in years, but also let's bear in mind what 4 stars actually means in our team. A 4-star player, if you could become that, is future Hungarian international, future like starter in a Champions League winning sort of team. So to give you an idea of where that maybe lies. And also his just current attributes are very, very solid. Highly professional personality. He's improving at a rate of knots right now, playing in some sort of youth team matches so far. The one downside on him is his very low determination. However, I'm not super concerned about that really, because he has everything else that I really like. That professionalism is really, really high, clearly. He's got unflappable there, which means it's really high, and obviously that's an indication of that too. I just think he's an excellent player, and I feel like he's definitely going to be a consistent, like, 30, 40 caps for Hungary type of player. Certainly the best player we've had since Zoltan, and honestly, pound for pound, he might honestly be better than Zoltan. On the stats side of things, Blaz grabs 35 goals this season. He actually shot in the second half of the season a lot more goals in, and ended up becoming, once again, the top scorer in the Champions League, and may well do it for the 3rd season in a row. Still doesn't manage to beat Bobby's tally of 19, though. Sem, as well, with 28 goals in only 18 starts. Now, admittedly, Sem's goals have been spread out, though. He did still get 18 in the league, which is very solid, but he did also grab 7 in 2 cup matches. A couple of goals off the bench too, and he's a fantastic player. There's just no doubt about it. But when you compare him to the overall quality of Durin, you can just see that Durin is just so much better. He's a mentality monster, and there's just no way that we could start him over Sem when he's actually fully fit. The fact that he's managed to bang, 30, 40 goals a season every single year for the last 3 years so consistently means he has to keep that job. And he's only 25 still. Surprisingly no amount of goals for Croatia. I wonder if he's playing off the wing there for some reason. But Nunez continues to be a fantastic midfielder there with his 19 goals. Griffiths has been superb. 14 goals this year for K-Griff. 10 assists, really, really solid. Didn't want to go back out on loan to Kekshme. He was the biggest player that came back from loan last season. Everybody else, as far as I know, stayed. Carpenter as well with 11 and 11. Mihal with 11 and 10. Just lovely to see that kind of freshness across there. The one player that you don't see in terms of the goals is Kenny. He's not been amazing in terms of goals this season, but once again, 18 assists. He just constantly does it. As for the way we've mostly lined up this season, it's been pretty much Durin through the middle with Sem as a backup there. Mihal or Bigmanovic in there, Nunez or Ingram, but mostly Nunez. Baumeister almost exclusively on this side. Sometimes Kevin in there too. Velasquez and Yamin always in the middle. Dala or Chichera at right back with Patrice, Montiel or Pretzel, though Pretzel has been preferred lately as Monty is starting to lose a lot of physical qualities, and it does seem to be slowing him. He's just lost like 4 or 5 points of pace and acceleration, and in big matches that really does matter. Sogos still killing it on the left hand side with Romero to come off the bench. We've also got the likes of Łukasz Barteczko to come in there. Gvardiol's played a little bit, Limoraro less so, but it's the same sort of lineup generally speaking, although we have been playing Akaveke for a few league games instead of Gacic in there too. Gacic again is losing some of his physicals, but he still has great technicals and mentals, so as a goalkeeper we could still get a few more years out of him before Liam Cooper probably comes back from his loan. Right, the loan farm, minus 102 now. It's actually got higher, remarkably. We've been really good at getting loan players out this season. I've been very impressed with us on that side of things, but here is how things are looking. That's the under 18 squad, Matt. That's the wrong one. Here we go. Loan farm. So you can see best loan farm scorer at the moment is Caballero for Dios Juri in the second tier. 33 goals is very, very solid indeed, but Davis for Spartacus as well, who are promoted. Cock Wriggling still just such a regular scorer for Zalaga said. Zivkovic just doing the business as well. You'll also note that almost all of these players have got long-term loan extensions. They're all, for the most part, going to be going through till 2044, which is really, really good news. There's only a couple that are going to be extended at all this summer. There's just an awful lot of quality players, but you can see what I mean about Honved now with Bing Sword, Atherton in there too, Mendes. They've got a lot of really good players that I want to make sure they get a chance to play in Europe, particularly as they're now starting to develop. I think they could really be a force to reckon with in a few seasons. The same with Giamot, and with Carlos Molina. Like, he is just, wow, what a player. Still only 20 years old. He's just an insanely good player. The fact that he could easily play as a wing-back too, with his 17 pace. On a centre-back, he's filthy. Genuinely insane. So the fact that Giamot will be in Europe, Honved will be in Europe too, is really, really exciting because they do have some of the best young players coming through. Kind of like what Haladash did several years ago. I really do rate them a lot. But you can just see the sheer quality of some of the... I mean, Omar Ben Salah is that good out on loan. Haladash still dominating that sort of things. It's worth noting, though, that Kishvarda don't actually have that many of the high-quality loans from us, and yet have managed to do it off their own backs. That's how good they've been. They're just signing players that are brilliant, moving them on for huge money, and then signing more of them. They're doing a great job of actually having good transfer AI. It's lovely to see. Finances-wise, we're a little bit in the mud. Another £40 million loss this year. We're down to £100 million in the bank, which for us is actually not amazing, which is why this summer there's probably going to be a big sale. I don't really know who. Plans are probably that it'll be someone like Macheri and possibly Łukasz Barteczko, honestly, because he's not got enough football for us, and I feel like we could probably get 30, 40, maybe even 50 million for him. But that pretty much sums up our season. So, over on stream right now, we have the Champions League final with us against Real Madrid. That's going to be the main event, so to speak. But before that, on today's match day, on the 20th, we have Kishvarda against Monaco. Can Kishvarda win their second Europa League of the save? Today, we find out. So join us over there for that. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed, subscribe. If you liked the video, like the video. That'd be awesome. And I'll see you guys soon. Hold your gun. Capybara. Bye-bye.